Well, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the committee that organizes these dinner and talks. Let's give yourself a round of applause for a beautiful meal, delicious meal. Yes, and thank Cumbies and the committee that organizes. Thank you so much. Our speaker tonight is Bill Ruffing, and Bill is a longtime supporter of the Baha'i community. He is married to Sheila Dean Ruffing, who spoke last Saturday. She gave a beautiful talk. They reside in Palm Harbor, and together with their stepchildren, Emily and Nicholas. Bill is a certified financial planner and owner of an elder care consulting practice. He will be speaking tonight on developing the virtue of self-discipline. And so please help me to welcome Bill Ruffing. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Good evening.
Good evening.
How is everyone tonight?
Wonderful.
Was the food good?
Yes.
Great. Isn't this a funny picture here? I was saying, sharing this with friends before we started, that a picture tells 1,000 words, and so my presentation is done. It says the whole thing right there. So tonight I'm excited to talk about a topic which is dear to me, and it's the topic of developing self-discipline. So our dear friend Cumbies asked me to talk at Dinner and a Talk, and I was thinking about what would a topic be that I could relate to that the group could benefit from. And I thought, well, because it's the beginning of the year, a lot of people set goals for the year, New Year's resolutions. And I thought it would be a convenient time to revisit the virtue of self-discipline because, of course, achieving your goals is definitely related to your habits and the self-discipline that you employ. In my younger years, I had not mastered this virtue yet. This is one of those things that I was a little bit slow on the uptake. I experienced some bumps in the road before I really got it. And some lessons in life, I think, you really just have to learn the hard way. And this was one of those for me. And so that's in part why I'm interested in talking about it with you. My goal tonight really is for the junior youth that they benefit from hearing this message because sometimes, if they can develop this skill early in their life could be a whole lot easier the sooner you develop this skill. You'll be able to accomplish your goals much easier. You can have greater self-confidence, and self-discipline ultimately leads to true freedom. Because if we think about the opposite of self-discipline, and we think about what it's like not to have self-discipline, let's just envision that for a moment. Your life is kind of chaotic because you're kind of just living life by the seat of your pants, and you're just kind of running from one thing to another. You're not really planning things out. You're always running late with things. You're always disorganized, and your life is in chaos. And so, to a certain extent, that can be imprisoning, that lack of discipline in your life. And so, the opposite, of course, having the self-discipline, is really all about freedom. But before we get into self-discipline, let's talk about discipline. What is discipline? Would anybody like to offer a thought about what their definition of discipline is? Organization? Absolutely. Anyone else? Farah? Control? Absolutely. Max? Yeah, how about the youth? Let's get some involvement from over here since this is for you, essentially. You guys are the clay. We could still work with you here, so I want some input from this corner over here. What's discipline to you? Yes, a pair. Behavior? Good behavior. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Rule. Absolutely, yes. Obligation. Yes, absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. What a great lead-in. It stems from the word disciple, which is a person who is a pupil or an adherent of the doctrines of another. A follower. For example, a disciple of Christ, someone that follows Christ's law. Okay? So that's disciple. Now, we look at some definitions for the word discipline. Let's look at some of the noun definitions first. Training to act in accordance with rules, activity, exercise, or a regimen that develops or improves a skill. Punishment inflicted by way of correction and training. Someone was saying that just a moment ago. The rigor or training effect of experience. Behavior in accord with rules of conduct. A set or system of rules and regulations. And this is one's a little bit different definition for the word discipline. A branch of instruction or learning, the disciplines of history and economics. So it's looking at kind of a branch in that sense of the word. Now let's look at the verb definitions. To train by instruction and exercise, or to drill. To bring to a state of order and obedience by training and control. Sort of like those dogs in the first slide that we saw that were practicing so much restraint. Because they knew if they went after the cat, what they'd be getting if they did. To punish or penalize in order to train and control. To correct, to chastise. And to sum it up, discipline is about walking a path. Let's look to an excerpt of the writings of Shoghi Effendi, one of the key figures in the Baha'i faith. Shoghi Effendi's use of the word discipline as it relates to Christ's life and Christ's message. Thanks, Bill. So why do we discipline? Now, I want to hear from the parents in the room. Why do we discipline our children? What are some good reasons for doing that? Absolutely. To steer them back on the path and to achieve goals or objectives, absolutely. Farah. Wow, that's an interesting one. To discipline them so they have security. That's neat. Mamanjin. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. To train them to do a certain skill, or a certain way. Sheila. Wow, to make their lives easier. See, that's like an advanced aspect of discipline because you don't really see that at first glance. Sometimes when we think about discipline as a young person, we think, what a drag. But really, we're doing this, we're being disciplined for our benefit. It's so that we can live with more freedom. That's really a neat input there. Anyone else on discipline? Yes, Bev. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's see what I had down here. Keep them out of harm's way. Someone, I think, said something along those lines. Avoid harmful behavior. Correcting poor behavior. Redirecting behavior towards the desired path. Encouraging positive behavior. Encouraging productive behavior. To learn from your mistakes and help you remain focused on your goals. So I think we had a lot of those from the audience here. Let's look at this funny cartoon. Hello, this is OnStar. We've detected misbehaving children in the back seat. Do you want us to turn this car around? I thought that was a neat sort of modern technology version on discipline. How about this one? Mom and I have a relationship. She keeps me grounded. As in, you're grounded. 15 minutes for tracking mud? I got 2.5 days for forgetting my anniversary. And then lastly, forget it, mister. You're not going anywhere until your room is clean and you figure out why my computer keeps crashing. Another technology slant on discipline. So from the New Testament, we have a reading here. So here we have a sense that it's not always fun, but in the end, our lives are going to be better because of this attribute. And here we have somebody attempting to play the violin, so which requires discipline, of course. So we've talked about discipline. Now let's talk about self-discipline. Okay, so this is a little bit different than discipline. You know, if discipline is about walking a path, then self-discipline means walking a path of your own choosing. Okay, so no one is putting this on you, you're kind of putting this on yourself. And it's the kind of thing that, you know, no one can make you be self-disciplined. It's kind of an internal job. You've got to do it on your own. Does that make sense? So self-discipline is the ability to manage oneself and one's emotions by using reason to determine a best course of action that opposes one's desires. Okay, now it's getting interesting because we're starting to talk about managing your emotions and using reason, because sometimes our first instinct about what we want to do isn't always the best thing for us to do. You know, it gets into maybe that lower nature, higher nature thing, and you have to kind of think the thought through about, well, what is the best course of action in the long run, not just the short run. So one thing I discovered as I was doing my research on self-discipline is this idea that self-discipline really is not dependent on level of education. You know, it's you can have people that are poorly educated but they have tremendous amount of self-discipline, and vice versa. You could have someone that is extremely well educated, but yet they don't practice a lot of self-discipline. So I don't think you can really make any assessments about level education, therefore they're definitely disciplined. Self-discipline is about practicing self-control and having, you know, control over what you do of yourself. Delaying gratification, you know, that's a key element. Sometimes you feel like doing one thing that may be a lot of fun in the short term, but then you decide, well, I better do the right thing, and so because there's a longer range benefit. It's the ability to see how decisions today will affect tomorrow. It's avoiding procrastination. This is an interesting one. It's saying no to additional burdens and responsibilities. Okay? So now we're putting like a different quality on it where we have a sense about our own boundaries and we have a sense for what's too much for us. And somebody asks us to do something, you know, if we're trying to be nice, we say, okay, yeah, I'll do it. But then afterwards, we regret it because we have all this other stuff that we have to do. So, it's about managing your own, what's on your plate. And if someone comes to you and says, look, I'd really like for you to do this, you might say, I'd really like to, but I've got these other commitments, and I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be able to do it. Does that make sense? So, and that's not something that you get right away. It's just kind of a trial and error thing. You learn it over time, I think. Also, then there's another, the last bullet on there, it's about not reacting to situations. Sometimes someone may do something to us and we get angry and we may want to react to the situation. But if we react and we hurt them back, we might get in trouble or it may not be good, And so, having that ability to restrain one's actions in spite of the feelings that you may have is another form of self-discipline. Okay? some notable advocates of self-discipline. I discovered this unknown quote, govern thyself, then you will be able to govern the world. And a similar idea from Confucius. Confucius say, he who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior. And with the Super Bowl just a week away, and the Green Bay Packers and the Steelers are in the Super Bowl, there was a famous coach of the Green Bay Packers by the name of Vince Lombardi. Some of you may know of Vince Lombardi. He was the winner of the first 2 Super Bowls. And in fact, the Super Bowl trophy is named after him. It's called the Lombardi Trophy. And his coaching philosophy was all about self-discipline. Every season, he went back to the fundamentals with all of his players. It was all about blocking and tackling. And I'm sure it was very boring for his players that had played for him for a number of years. But they knew what they were going to expect in the training before each season. It was going back to basics. And it was by going back to those basics that they were such a formidable opponent during those years. A couple of quotes from Vince Lombardi. Men decide their habits, and their habits decide their future. Another one. The dictionary is the only place that success comes before work. Hard work is the price we must pay for success. I think you can accomplish anything if you're willing to pay the price. And then a quote from Napoleon Hill. He was the author of a really famous book called Think and Grow Rich. It was written in the early 1900s, and it's almost 100 years ago since it was written, and it's still being read today by many, many people. And Napoleon Hill says, self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you don't control what you think, you can't control what you do. Simply, self-discipline enables you to think first and act afterward. So, an element of restraint here. We've talked about that before. So now I'd like to take you on a little journey of self-discipline. It's a little bit about my past, and hope to share this with the junior youth so that they might benefit from it. You know, many times in life we learn through others. And sometimes we might admire someone who's doing some good things, and we'll hold them up in esteem, and they'll be kind of a mentor to us. And so we'll learn from their examples. And other times, there'll be people that do bad things. And we learn from them as well, because we learn what not to do. And so, you know, anyone can be an example. It's just what kind of example do you want to be? It's sort of like fame and infamy. You know, even the people that are assassins and shoot famous people become infamous, you know, and they get fame. It's just a question of, did they get it for good or did they get it for bad? So, so today you're going to hear through my stories a little bit of both. You know, you're going to hear some about what I didn't do so good, and then hopefully you'll hear some things that I did do well. I was a bit of a late bloomer in developing the attribute of self-discipline. In my younger years, I lacked direction. I'm talking about really my high school years and my early college years. I didn't really have much in the way of goals. I didn't really know where I was headed. My parents were concerned for me. I was disorganized. I was somewhat irresponsible, very irresponsible. I had to learn these lessons the hard way before I could really get it together. You know, when I look back at my high school and early college years, I was kind of coasting. You know, I really wasn't giving it my all. You know, I just, for some reason, I didn't see the benefit yet. You know, I was almost playing this game like, well, what's the least amount of effort that I can do to get the best grade? I was trying to optimize, you know, and it really doesn't work. I put things off to the last minute, and as a result, I subjected myself to enormous stress. You know, when you leave things off to the last minute, then you got that deadline approaching really fast, and it doesn't feel good. You know, and has anyone heard of the law of reciprocity? This notion of, you know, what you give out to the universe kind of comes back at you, or what goes around comes around. This is a reading from 2 Corinthians. Who would like to read that for us? Thank you, King James Bible, 2 Corinthians. Okay, thank you, Bev. So this notion of, hey, if we're a little bit cheap, that's what we're going to get. If we're give it our all, we're going to get that too. So, and in my early days, my academic performance reflected my relative effort or the lack thereof. I was kind of a mediocre student. So what does lack of self-discipline look like? Being lazy, procrastinating, putting off the simple tasks, putting things off till later, I'll do that later. Doing the easy task instead of the difficult task. That can be something we can kind of trick ourselves with. And this is an element in time management in the business world where you can trick yourself into thinking you were productive in a day because you did all the easy stuff, so you could check off a lot of stuff. But really, you were just taking the easy way out because all the hard things on your list you didn't really attack. Ben Franklin, one of the founding fathers of our country, has a very famous quote, "Do not put off to tomorrow that which can be done today." And then this notion of, giving into your lower nature rather than embracing your higher nature comes into play. So how do we feel when we procrastinate? Has anybody ever had a term paper or a project that you kind of got a late start on and didn't really attack, and maybe the teacher said, okay, it's going to be due 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, and you kind of wait till almost 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now, and then you go, Mom, I got this project due. You got to help me with this. Does that resound? Anybody I relate to that in any way? Well, how do we feel when we go through that? Guilt for not getting started earlier on the project. That's one of the feelings that we get in touch with. We get this feeling of stress as the deadline approaches because we're 2 days away and we haven't started it. And we're very nervous that whether we're going to be able to pull it together. It creates chaos in our lives because all of a sudden, all that other homework that we have to do, we have this mountain of stuff that we have to do for the project, and we got to do our other homework. So everything gets concentrated because of our lack of planning and addressing it early. It can cause insecurity because you have feelings of uneasiness about the fact that you got started late and that's not really good, and your self-respect can suffer. It can play with your head a little bit. And I think this is one of the lessons that everybody has to learn the hard way, and hopefully not too many times before you really get it, because what you realize is that if you really step back from it after you've done that before in your life, it's that it's not worth it. All that stress that you brought onto yourself and all those feelings of guilt and everything like that, it's just, why did you do it? Because it wasn't worth it in the end. There's the stressed out man over there. I'm going to share one story of self-discipline that was kind of a missed opportunity for me. In high school, I had the desire to play on the high school basketball team. And I tried out, and I made it to the very last cut. And I was sad to say that I was not accepted on the team, but I got it through like 5 cuts, and then on the very last one, I got cut. And a friend of mine at the time suggested that there were some great leagues in the area that I could play basketball during the next year and keep all my skills fresh, and then I could come back next year and go out again if I really wanted to play on the team. And the thing is that at that time in my life, I just did not have the self-discipline to do that. I didn't have the foresight of seeing that not playing for the high school team was not a foregone conclusion, that if I really wanted it and I worked towards it, I could probably make it a reality. But I didn't have that foresight at that time in my life, and I didn't have the self-discipline to join that league to keep my skills sharp, and I never went out for the team again, and I never played basketball in high school. And now, I'm 5'9", and I've got a vertical leap of about 24 inches, so I probably would have never made it beyond high school. Michael Jordan and I wouldn't have been on the same team, but nonetheless, you know, something that I might have enjoyed was ruled out by my lack of self-discipline. So my decisions were really made for myself by lack of planning and skills. Second story about self-discipline was a little bit different, and this is relating to the high school tennis team. The tennis coach for our high school tennis team was an ex-Marine, and he was one of these guys with really short hair, and he was really built. I mean, this guy was, you know, you wouldn't want to mess with him. Really tall and stocky, and he demanded 100% effort. I mean, I think he was still in the Marines while he was coaching tennis, but he just was, you know, demanded 100% effort all the time. He stressed the fundamentals of the game, and for some reason, I responded well to his coaching, you know, his style. You know, I think that there are some children that respond well to their parents' discipline, and they just become lovely children because of their parental influence. And then there are other children that need to hear it from an independent voice. For some reason, their own parents, they go parent deaf when it comes to, you know, what their parents are talking about. But somebody of the same age, somehow in a position of authority, they respond well to that other person. And this was the case for me and my tennis coach. I focused on improving every day, and within 2 years, I was ranked first in the sectional tennis tournament. Came out of nowhere. You know, 2 years earlier, I was a hack. And 2 years later, I was ranked in the state. So my success in tennis helped me to develop my confidence. And it paved the way for other successes in my life. It was perhaps the first thing that I really worked hard at. And through diligence and perseverance and hard work, I came to achieve some modicum of success. And that, I like the taste of it. You know, when I got that taste of this is the formula that works for achieving goals, I wanted more of it. And so the lesson learned for me is that self-discipline and hard work are the keys to achieving goals. This is really a lesson about work ethic. I went to 2 colleges. My first college was in upstate New York. It was called Oneonta State College. Because of my lack of academic success in high school, I didn't attend Harvard or Yale. I went to a place called Oneonta State, which you may never have heard of. It was an okay college. It was a good place to start. My parents were glad that I was going to college. In my junior year, I transferred to Georgia Tech, which was in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was a much more rigorous school. And the engineering school that I was in had a 3D policy, which basically, if you get 3 Ds, you're out. And my first quarter at Georgia Tech, I got a D. So I was like, ooh, that's not too good. 2 more and I'm out. And I remember commiserating with my roommate. His name was Rich. And as a matter of fact, I just saw him at my 25th anniversary to Georgia Tech this past October. And Rich and I were having this conversation after we got our grades back. And Rich had attended Oneonta with me, and he knew me back in Oneonta, and he obviously knew me at Georgia Tech. And I'll never forget his words about me getting a D. He said, "Bill, this isn't Oneonta anymore. You can't just coast and get by. This is Georgia Tech. If you do that here, you will fail out." And it was like a knife stuck into me. It was like the truth. Ooh, that hurt so bad. Because it was true, you know. It was the truth of my behavior was named. I think it was the first time in my life where somebody really called me on something and got my attention. And I thanked him when we were at the reunion. I said, you know, you said something to me 25 years ago that stayed with me, and I really want to thank you for doing that. And he said, oh, no problem. He probably forgot about the whole thing, but you know, it caused me to reevaluate my self-discipline and my work ethic, and I made a decision that I was going to apply myself at Georgia Tech. I was going to work hard. I was going to work my butt off. Excuse the French. I was going to give it the old college try. That's a saying that they have, an idiom, I guess you would say. And I ended up excelling academically. I graduated with honors, and I was recruited by IBM, and that was my first job out of college. So I kind of turned that ship around from that first quarter at Georgia Tech through hard work and discipline. It all paid off. So that's my story about my work ethic. So how do we develop self-discipline? You know, I've kind of learned that it's not an overnight process. It's something that is developed slowly over time. And I think that, like any of the virtues, I think that it's practice. You know, you just keep on practicing. If you start, you can start by, you know, for the youth and the junior youth here tonight, you can start by developing simple habits. Things like, you know, hang your coat up when you come into the house, or make your bed when you get up in the morning, or brush your teeth twice each day, or put your clothes away or in the hamper when you come home and when you change, instead of throwing them on the floor. You know, have some organization in your life. This is one in our home that we practice, and we have a rule that you get your work done before your playtime. And it works for us. It's worked for me. It's worked for Sheila. You know, if you think about it, if you play first and you have that project hanging over your head, do you really enjoy the playtime? No, because you're kind of thinking in the background of your mind that you got this work you got to do. On the other hand, if you flip it around and you do the work first and then you play, then you can relax and you can enjoy the playtime for, you know, because you've done the work first. That's a great, I think, rule to develop. And then the do it now approach. You know, I think that's a great rule. Instead of just kind of constantly putting stuff off, someone asks you to do something, just knock it out. Because who likes to hear from their mom on the 5th time, I asked you to take out the garbage, you know, and instead you just do it the first time and it's done. And, you know, that's, I've learned from my wife that that's one of her languages of love. If she asks me to do something, I do it right away because she likes that. And so if I jump on things, I get, you know, good reaction to that. You know, she likes it, and she lets me know it too. She says, you know, when I do my stuff right away, and I'm like a little kid. You know how little kids like to be told that they did something good? I'm like that too, and I'm like, did you see that I already did this? And I said, yes, I saw. Thank you. So, and these small successes can have a ripple effect in your life. If you can really manage the small stuff and develop this self-discipline, you know, it carries over into so many aspects of your life. So, and it just feels good when your house is in order. You know, when you got your stuff together. You know, it just feels, you know, like you have it under control. So these successes carry over into other parts of your life. And adults, you know, I just want to remind everybody that kids mirror your actions and behavior. And so if we're not good models for this behavior, you know, kids watch more by actions than our words. So we have to live these same disciplines if we can expect our children to. And again, it's about practice. That's how we acquire these virtues. So we talked about things in the in the world of work and stuff like that, in academics. And now let's talk about the spiritual life. So how do we practice self-discipline in our spiritual life? What if we're Baha'i? What does that look like? How do we practice self-discipline as a Baha'i in our spiritual life? Are there some Baha'is in the audience that would like to help me here? Susan. Absolutely. I wonder if that's the first one. Yeah, great. Anybody else? Thank you, Susan. The fasting. Okay, that's 4 down. I can't hit that yet. Anyone else? 95 alapas. Uh-oh. 95 alapas. Reading the writings every morning and night. Anyone else? Nagar? No? Nikki, did you have anything? Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's the second one there. Yes, ma'am. Moral classes, absolutely, absolutely. So daily meditation, observing the 19-day fast in the month of Allah, which is the last month of the Baha'i calendar, and then contributing to the Baha'i Fund, and just, in general, observing the laws of the faith, which are meant to protect us, right? And all the major religions have rules of conduct that are completely in sync with the other faiths that are about helping us to stay out of harm's way and protect us. So here we have another reading from Shoghi Effendi. So we have yet another use of the word discipline by Shoghi Effendi. Some additional thoughts. I was thinking as I was going through and doing the research here that one of the things I feel is that it's easier to be disciplined when you have a clear goal in mind. If you don't care where you're going, anywhere you end up is fine. So if we have goals and we keep those goals in front of us so that they're reminders to us, I think it can be easier to stay the course and keep working towards those goals. I discovered that developing a vision for your life is very important. Having an idea of where you're headed, where you're going. From Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy he is. So here we have this sense that happiness is going to be related to our ability to stay the course in keeping with the laws and maintaining the course. Every major faith has a set of rules that are meant to protect us, and God has a plan for you to serve Him and others. And I think it's really important that we all, set goals for ourselves. And visualization is so important. In the professional sports world, all the major athletes are big with visualization techniques. And so having the ability to see yourself, with whatever your goal is, and really, have some imagery in your mind in the future about what it's going to feel like to have that goal, that's really powerful, and it can really activate the self-discipline. So let's investigate God's plan for your life and pray about it. And I'd like to end our talk tonight, and then we'll open it up for some comments and questions. But we'll have a reading from the founder of the Baha'i Faith, Baha'u'llah, about this topic of investigating God's plan for your life. Okay, and I'm going to close with one more reading from Baha'u'llah. I bear witness at this moment, O my God, to my helplessness and thy sovereignty, my feebleness and thy power. I know not that which will profiteth me or harmeth me. Thou art verily the all-knowing, the all-wise. Do thou decree for me, O Lord, my God and my Master, that which will make me feel content with thine eternal decree and will prosper me in every world of thine. Thou art in truth the gracious, the bountiful. Baha'u'llah. Thank you for coming tonight and for listening to a talk on self-discipline.